Roy Rogers days. When it's night time in Nevada, I'm dreaming of the old days on the prairie and you. I miss you when the campfires are gleaming. I wonder if you miss me too. I can see the great divide and the trails I used to ride, the only bit of heaven I knew. When it's night time in Nevada, I'm dreaming of the old days on the prairie and you. Great divide and the trails I used to ride, the only bit of heaven I knew. When it's night time in Nevada, I'm dreaming of the old days on the prairie and you. Okay, it's time for our special guest, and I don't know hardly how to start on this. Butch Robbins played with Bill Monroe for twice. Actually, was it 2 different times? But as far as I'm concerned, Butch is a legendary banjo player in our area, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce him. And so, without further ado, we'll introduce Butch Robbins. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Willard.
I don't know what I'm doing here, but I'll
You better be big with the guitar. I mean, you got all the various accoutrements.
everything's right here, isn't it?
What your color gonna pick? What you want to start out with? Any old thing?
That's a new one on us, please.
Willard, you play you down yonder guitar runs for us?
No, I can't do it. We get Butch Barker up here, he can do it.
I gotta play him a tune after a while. Go in the garden.
Yep.
Here's the way I start out all my practice sections.
Favorite banjo tune.
here a while ago.
I think I
You know
vaguely remember it. I think we
it. Scott's the one we get to stump on this. Thank you.
you were stuck.
Anything we can play for y'all? Any old tunes?
Sled ride?
I don't know that. I swear I don't. Not enough to play it. I could if a bunch of other people took off on me first, but I'm a quick study. I'm working on Tallahassee right now. Let's see. I'm going to play something for you a little bit later on this evening, but right now, I done got old, you know, out here. I've been playing a little bit over 50 years now, and I came along right toward the end of when music was sort of happening in the 50s, and I just did 6 days of video for some folks at Radford University not too long ago, trying to explain in musical terms what Steve Allen had explained about our education system when he wrote a book called Dumps, D-U-M-B-T-H. And, you know, it's like jazz music this side of Dave Brubeck's Take 40, or Take 5. it all started going out to the unknown places. And all these fusion musics seemed to come together and everything. Well, what we just played for you guys right there is a real simple little bossa nova. Just a rhythm form under it. Now, I talk a lot about Bill Monroe. I just did this thing for Radford University I was telling you about, and got to explaining into it that the bottom line separating factor of any musical form is its underlying rhythm, the rhythm that's underneath it. In the 70s, what we've got that was called bluegrass, that was happening back in those days, they started accenting the runs. You know, the runs on your guitar used to be like punctuation to poetry. Somebody would sing a song and there would be a G run to give it a period, or a run to get from one chord key to the next. It was like your comma at the end of a sentence. It was just like punctuation there. But all of a sudden somebody hit a G run and doo-doo-doo, bam, and the whole band would hit there. And you'd get this great emphasis on that one place on the beat or the backbeat, whichever they chose to do. Well, what that had the effect of was breaking the continuity of the rhythm itself. You know, I've tried to explain to folks when I come down here, to sit and play with this guy is one of the most wonderful experiences I have in music these days, because he and a fellow that he used to play with named Marvin Cockrell down here, a bass player, they were one of the most wonderful rhythm sections I ever played to, because it was just wonderfully pretty. Good sounds, big chords underneath you, you know, the rhythm and timing and all of that stuff. I don't want to get too far out. I'm trying to be more kinder this year and wear brighter clothing. What can we do here? I could get to rattling on, but we're going to play some of the tunes that I'll be including after a while when I do you a piece of music that I'm working on out of an Oriental scale I learned. Here's one of the tunes. One of the things that I stress to people is melody. Here's as close as I know to the melody of an old tune. Bill Monroe's brother, Butch Monroe, used to play. He'd get up and give this long-winded introduction. He'd stand around town talking like this, and you couldn't hardly tell what he was saying or nothing else. But he was trying to explain when the James brothers, or was it Jesse James and what was his brother? Frank was his brother. They used to, after some of their escapades, used to hang out at this hotel down in Arkansas. And they had a fiddle player that played in the parlor of the hotel. And if the police came through the front door, he would launch in on this tune, which would alert Jesse and his brother that they should exit stage left as soon as possible. So this Butch would introduce that song like that, and here we are in the key of D. Butch, I guess it's about time we tried it.
Got it in your head now?
Well, I don't know whether I do or not. I can sit out there, if I can hum it to you, I should be able to play it, huh? Messed up with you, I was doing it backwards. Yep, me too. Me too. Anything else we can play for y'all?
Willard banjo.
Mule and banjos. You got, which one do you want to play that part? You ain't gonna do it, are you? You bail out on that lead guitar work every time. We used to play this thing, you know, back, and somebody stuck a thing out on Facebook of it like not too long ago with Don Reno and Arthur Smith playing it. And I hope them Pekelny Fleck boys out there pick up on Arthur Smith's banjo parts on it, because he was just fabulous running up and down the neck on this thing. But it was originally called Feudin' Banjos. And then Jim and Jesse started playing it in the later part of the 50s, and it was with mandolin and banjo, and they called it Malkin Banjos. And one of the first bunches I ever played with around the Fiddlers Convention and everything, no boy named Jim Holder, and they had a band called the Border Riders. I think they're from down around Winston-Salem somewhere. I remember they included, we had played Old Slewfoot, and they included it on Gaylax's, whatever it was, anniversary record that year. That they had the only thing we didn't play it at Gaylax. We actually played it over at Freeze. And they took a lift from the Freeze Fiddlers Convention and put it on the Gaylax record, which I always thought was kind of weird. Y'all ain't got no requests.
John Henry.
Huh?
John Henry.
John Henry. When you come up here to play down yonder with us, well, if you'll just render it as a vocal, we got you covered. They ain't got no requests.
They got a request.
Hang on for this. Won't you come? protest song against machinery right there. And you better have some requests. It could get just all kinds of weird here.
Well, we'll take whatever you give.
I say that 200-300 years from now, when the history of American music, North American music's written out, there's going to be two names pop out of the hat. One of them will be Bill Monroe, and the other will be a fellow named Louis Armstrong. Just about everything done in the second half of the 20th century can be directly traced to one of those guys' recorded career. You know, most people come along didn't ever really even hear them, but they heard people who had heard the records. You know, Louis Armstrong was recorded very prolifically at the beginning of and all through his career, as was Bill Monroe. And the influence, you know, there's a reason Bill Monroe's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too. And he is. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Songwriters Hall of Fame, Country Music Hall of Fame, Bluegrass Hall of Fame, the whole shooting match across the board. He influenced so many people, you know, on Elvis's first records. Carl Perkins talking about hearing that banshee screaming out. You can hear it in Jerry Lee Lewis's music. You can hear it in Elvis Presley's music. It's all out there. That old man, the dynamic fire that he brought into music that didn't exist in country music before he came along. You know, that was what bluegrass music was. It wasn't just any collage of acoustic string band music. It was a specific music form there that was powered by that old man's right hand and his mandolin chop. But here's the other guy. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed days, the dark sacred nights, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors in the rainbow so pretty in the sky are also in the faces. People going by, I see friends shaking hands, saying how do you do? Everyone saying I love you. I hear babies cry and I watch them grow. They learn much more than I learned. I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Have we got anybody in here that can sing?
No, Scott can.
Scott, can you sing? What key would it be in?
G, I think, maybe.
I wish you'd have welded this thing a while ago.
I said the moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna live me. Said the moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna prove the truth. And the sun and night stars shining bright. Whisper from on high, your love said goodbye. I said the moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna live. I said the moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna live the blue. Blue moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna live the blue. In the sun and night, the stars shine bright. Whispering from on high, your love said goodbye. I said the moon up Kentucky, keep on shining. Shine on the one that's gonna live the blue.
What's next, fellas?
You play something like Golden Slippers or something like that?
Golden Slippers. I don't know that I can do very much of a job with that. I used to accompany a lot of fiddle players who played. I never have really sat down and thought about talking about that.
Remember that one, that little one right now?
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, I used to just wing all that stuff when I was having to play it for real. So. How does the second part of it go? All right, go ahead.
Monroe. Seemed like a lot of the pickers that played with him was kind of drawn to the band instead of somebody he actually went out and always handpicked. There's people that kind of drawn to Monroe's music a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, he
I
did
know.
a job. He paid you on a regular basis. He put you on the Grand Ole Opry. Oh, he's like, you know.
I was thinking about the different people that, Bob Black had played with him. He was a heck of an artist, too, not just a banjo player. It kind of runs together, the music and the art, kind of like Willard there, you know.
Very artistic person. Yes, he is. I mean, it's across the board. You know, it's a funny thing on this deal I was telling you I did about for Radford University. I talked a little bit about art. I don't know. We ain't got a whole lot of spring chickens in here. I've really enjoyed watching it when I watch each new generation come along and rewrite history to its own design for whatever that is. And it makes stuff so damn complicated anymore that I can't understand what anybody's talking about. Everybody, it don't matter what they do, they all sound like damn politicians to me. Because they talk, there's a car dealer, Larry Sheeler, over in Christiansburg, calls the stuff psychobabble. And people just start that, mouth going without brain being engaged a lot of times. I don't even know where I was going with this. What started all this? Okay, so I want a simple definition for everything. I like stuff that is defined that I can understand. I don't deal well with unknowns in my universe. If it's completely unknown, I'll make it up to fill in the blanks. But that's what all humans do. We require order in our universes. And if we don't get that order, we'll make up what fills in the blanks of what we don't know. We do that. I mean, that's just one of the ways that we maintain our sanity here. Art. That of human contrivance which stimulates the human intellect. That of human contrivance which stimulates the human intellect. What makes it be so? There's only one determining factor. That's time. There ain't no critic can tell you what it is. If it could, Achy Breaky Heart would still be on everybody's lips singing it. There ain't no set of record sales out here that can tell you what it is. But that Mona Lisa that was beautiful 400 years ago, people still stare at it in awe today. And the music, a lot of these old cats like Duke Ellington and Louis Armstrong and Bill Monroe, and some of these guys did, all the youngsters look at them. Even today's comedians, almost a century after the fact now, will still go back and look at W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers and Mae West as the people. Why? What's the reason? Why were all those films that they made so much better than the films that were made this side of them? One of the reasons was it was like old guys making the recordings. People go back and listen to these old Flatt and Scruggs Monroe recordings that are out there. That's the classics. Those classics were rehearsed for months on the road before they ever went into a recording studio with them. Those Marx Brothers routines were practiced time and time again in front of live audiences. They knew how long it was going to take for the audience to react to that particular gag, so they could know on film when you blast the next one in on top of it. You give them time to laugh or not. Your timing of all your act there. Well, it used to be back in the old days, people tried themselves out in their music and their art, their acting and everything out on people live first. And then they committed it to the recorded media. Nowadays, they go in the studio with a folio full of songs. They've never tried it in front of an audience before. They hope to God they get them a Rick Rubin producer out there, because anything he touches turns to gold. Tex Nobody's still operating in Nashville. The Tex Nobody producers, they're down there every day. Tex comes to town, he's got $5,000 in his pocket. He leaves town 3 days later, his pocket's empty, and he's got a couple of thousand copies of his CD in the trunk of his car. That's Tex. He's really the one that fueled most of those studios down there. You had the A-Team studios like RCA stuff out on 17th. You had Bradley's Barn out in Mount Juliet. You had Pete's Place up on 17th Avenue is where he was. But most of those little studios that survived down there survived off of Tex Nobody. Really funny. And he's still down there now. He charges $7,500 for doing 6 songs nowadays. That's what that producer charges you. And he'll do that 6 songs. If you want to come back in 6 months, he'll do 6 more on you. And you know what? That person that's got them first 6 songs in their hot pocket, they don't ever go home and say, if I'm that good, that guy's going to be selling me to a major label. They just sit there and get that $7,500 together so they can go do it again. It's a real funny business. Real funny business when you're trying to turn X amount of talent or music into Y amount of money. And it's the same way with what Willard does or anybody else. Anybody who puts their talent, who puts their heart into their work, who puts their soul into their work. It's real funny these days. What does it take? What does it take to create celebrity? You know, when I was a little fella going around these fiddlers conventions and playing, I was sort of a arrogant, cocky little fella because I was good and I knew it. And I got all the guys, you know, the old guys like Tommy Gerald and Clark Kessinger and those folks. I just happened to be good enough that they would use me in their pickup bands, and that only boosted my ego. It's like going over to El Tenedor skating rink one night when Carter and Ralph are over there, and they get into one of their little feuds, and Ralph goes out and sits in the car, and I get to play the last set with Carter standing. Wow. Or the same thing on Reno and Smiley show. I'd go out to their shows, and when Don would pick up a guitar, he'd hand me his banjo, and I'd get to play the banjo on some of their programs, you know. So I really thought I was something. You know, Jimmy Painter, a high school teacher once upon a time, I'll tell you this, because if you ain't got no requests, shoot, I'll just talk for a while. I was able to maintain like a 93 or 94 average. I kept myself in the Beta Club or whatever, National Honor Society, whatever it was, and I didn't go to school back then. They all knew if I had to come to school for any period of time, I just quit, because I was going to be a musician. You know, I was going to go out and be this famous musician. And I had a high school principal tell me to come up to me. His name was Jimmy Painter one time. He said, one of these days, he said, you're like a big fish in a little pond. He said, one of these days you're going to go walk into a room where everybody's just as smart as you are, and some of them are going to be a whole lot smarter. And he said, remember my words. He said, it'll be the biggest shock you ever saw in your life. And I'm sitting there, my little smug self, saying, oh, sure. Because I was young, and I had the whole scene covered back then. I got into the studio with an old boy named Leon Russell once upon a time. He was this rock and roll star. And here he was sitting off in the corner of a room. I'll sort of describe it from my point of view. If you put him back there in that corner, he's in Bradley's barn, and the recording part of the studio was about 2/3 of this distance and a little bit wider. Leon back in the corner there, and on the other side of him is Ray Eddington and Bobby Thompson and Tut Taylor and myself playing a little old 5-string dobro. And so you had Lightning Chance playing the upright bass, Pig Robbins, Hargus Robbins playing the piano out in the middle of the floor there. Had J.J. Cale with that little old guitar his had the back tore out of it, mess of a thing that he had. Had a drum cage out in the middle of it. Had Phoebe Snow with 3 other singers, Jim Buchanan with 3 fiddle players. That's all going on at one time. And I'm playing an instrument that literally we have to stick the microphone down inside the instrument so it can be heard. That's how loud it wasn't. So we're doing Uncle Pen. And he does it. And he's standing up there. He's got a 5th of Jack Daniels in one hand and a Winston cigarette in the other one, standing behind this podium reading off the words of this song, singing. And everything he's just trying to get what I found out later on when I did Shine Hallelujah Shine. You can literally hear a smile. And I can show you how it happens in a recording studio sometimes, but you can hear a smile. I recorded 43 songs once upon a time, and the only thing you could hear is it. Probably one of the better records I ever did. The only thing you could hear on the 2-inch tape in between the songs was laughter. And it was one of the neatest things that ever happened to me, being able to work with those guys. But I'm getting back to the school principal telling me one of these days I was going to walk into a room and everything, and here I am in this room, and it's 18 all the musicians in Nashville, Tennessee, and I got this rock and roll star up there. It says he learned about country music when he bought 100 tapes in a truck stop out in Arizona, shoveling a car back to Tulsa. That was his background in country music. So we're playing Uncle Pen there and get ready to go, and that people would come from far away. People would come from far away and dance all night till the break of day. Colorado, don't you know you Uncle Pen was ready to go. Goes into a seventh. I was cute. I did that, made an augmented seventh out of it before it goes on. So we get done with the tune. And everybody's sitting there, and he asks, "Oh, what do y'all think about that?" And everybody says, "Oh, we thought it was great, man." He says, "Yeah," he said, "That's a good one, but I think we got a little better one in us." He ain't wearing no headphones now. But young man, if you would, you can leave that F note out where we're going into that second chorus. I ran into that guy right there that Jimmy Painter told me about. and it shocked the hell out of me. Because all of a sudden I was sitting there, he could tell you what notes were in the air. He was born with a spinal cord injury. When he was a youngster, he was crippled all his life. They gave him classical piano lessons starting when he was about 4 or 5 years old. He was the most trained. I've run into 3 musicians who had just glorious talent, and they trained it on top of it. And that's Leon Russell, Kathy Chiavala, and Tony Williamson. He's a mandolin player that Scott knows from down in North Carolina. They're possibly the 3 most brilliant musicians who trained their talent. You know, Kathy's got a master's degree in classical opera from Oberlin College. You know, these people knew everything, the inside out of everything they were doing. 3 of the most talented people. Then you got a case like Bill Monroe, and then you got a case like Bill Keith out there. Those were the only two consummate geniuses I ever met in my whole travels out there in the bluegrass world, that they called it. And their genius was as different as daylight and dark. With Bill Keith, everything reduced itself to a formula or a number or a pattern. With Monroe, it was just the unfolding of sound in an organized fashion that fit whatever his palette was that particular day. Still ain't got no requests. How about that? Can you sing on the piece? I can't either. I don't know the words to this.
Bonaparte's Retreat.
Bonaparte's Retreat. That's the one I'm going to do.
We'll do that, take a break. How's that?
All right. All right, here's old timey. I heard old timey people do this. This one gets you moving. In between everything, there's a rest in this thing. Goes. It goes like. Fiddle bow, he'd undo the frog and put his fiddle up here and put the stick on behind his fiddle and wrap the hair around it when he'd play this thing. And he played it with that drone in between all the parts. But that's all it's going to be. It's just got that couple of measures. I'm sharp to you now. they'd come to Gaylax, and they'd usually have a big old Buick or something. They'd show up, and the trunk of that car would be just full of liquor. And they had it segregated out, you know. The stuff had been aged for a year was like in Scotch bottles, and the stuff that was 9 months old would be in bourbon bottles, and the stuff 6 months old would be in vodka. And when you get down to the stuff they run off last week, it'd be in milk jug. And you could always tell what they thought of you picking based on which level. You know, if you graduated up to those Scotch bottles early on, you were well thought of in their quarters. But Uncle Tommy fumbled around with a banjo a little bit, and he showed me this tuning. And I went home and wrote this tune. It was the title cut to the First Rounder album I did, I think somewhere about 1976 or 77. I dedicated this to Snuffy Jenkins. It's called 40 Years Late. And there you have it. Went over to Frank Neat's shop a few years ago. You heard a few minutes ago on that Louisville breakdown, I got real tangled up in that part. And you got word goes up where you got to go up there. Frank shamed me. He hurt me. He cut me deep. He told me I was subscribing to the Little Roy Lewis School of Evangelism. He told me that I needed to roll the picks back over my fingers, that it would give me much better tone and everything when I was doing it. So I've tried it, and folks, it's the hardest damn thing I've ever been. I've been trying to do it now for 3 or 4 years, and I still get an all funky finger just slide across the string.
But you like it.
Well, the verdict's still out. I've recorded a little bit with it, and I think the sound is just a little bit brighter. home now to their banjos, whether it was Earl Scruggs or Don Reno or Alan Shelton. Alan Shelton and Doug Dillard and Don Stover were the only three guys I ever heard play that I thought could play an archtop banjo. Pardon me, they had a right hand on them that could really snap out an archtop banjo. Yeah, let's play Down Yonder. So, I mean, they're close to the same thing because.
Okay.
Okay. That's that thing right there Willard won't do. I know we can't do it. You told me you couldn't do that at all, didn't you?
Well, I miss it about half the time.
I'll tell you all kinds of stuff.
He won't miss it.
Yeah.
Here's a fellow back here. I was out of playing for like 10 years when I left Nashville in the early 80s and everything. I didn't pick up a banjo, didn't want nothing around. When I started playing a little bit, I came back down around Wayne Henderson's shop and started playing with some of those guys, and I ran into this fellow back here. And it was just, I've got a picture of us somewhere on a flatbed trailer. Joanne, you were asking me about that picture on that flatbed trailer wearing that Vietnam jacket that I had on that day. That was, he was the other guy that was in the
Mountain City.
Mountain City. Butch Parker has joined us now. We just lost our friend Donnie Duncan 3 weeks ago.
Flat and Scruggs is a bluegrass band.
Is that a fair statement? Stanley Brothers Bluegrass Band. How come Reno Smiley, a bluegrass band? How come they never billed themselves as such? They were always a country music band. They never billed themselves as a bluegrass band. The fellow up here said they didn't know that much about the history of the music. Music was born somewhere between 1945 and 1949 in Nashville, Tennessee, when Bill Monroe included Earl Scruggs in the band, the Bluegrass Boys. Earl was a timekeeper who stabilized the timing of a meteoric young country music star of that day by the name of Bill Monroe. And when the metronome-like pace that Earl brought into that band stabilized Monroe's rhythm to where it formulated itself, there, bluegrass music was born. The name was applied to the music to separate Monroe from the remainder of the Grand Ole Opry cast. He was not a nice fellow. He was a very arrogant fellow. He was very proud of the fact that he could sing higher than any other man on the Grand Ole Opry. He could play in keys that their fiddle players didn't even dream of. You know, they're the A, D, and E guys down there that are playing. And he stayed on that musical high horse until sometime in the late 50s. By that time, there were bands like Ray Price's Cherokee Cowboys and all these other guys. You know, Ernest Tubb was carrying a band then that was very, very good. And these guys were hiring into their bands musicians that were, you know, closely akin to jazz musicians of that day. The Buddy Emmonses that they would bring into the band, and the Hank Garlands, people like that, and playing their music. And finally, by the late 50s, when Monroe's career was pretty much down the tubes, as was country music of that day, Cash took him out on a tour in 1957, and he was booed off the stage 3 consecutive nights. They sent him home of a tour on the West Coast. In 1958, his world collapsed. Ed Mayfield died. He took sick over here in Pulaski, Virginia, wound up dying in Bluefield. That's the closest hospital they could get him into. Monroe filed for personal bankruptcy that year. His wife divorced him. The divorce wasn't final until 59, but 58 was a pretty rough year on the old boy. And everything down the tubes for him. When I do my little presentation for folks talking about the origin and development of the music as an art form, I have 45 to 58 being the primal form of the music, with the music being reborn in the early 60s when Monroe figured out that fiddle tunes, the intricacies of fiddle tunes, could put him back in that place where he was revered by the country musicians he would encounter around the Grand Ole Opry and other places. And he found that the big change was Bill Keith coming into the band. And it's a long story, but the scope of the music all of a sudden done this, where it had been out here, you know, I'll play Wheelhouse for you in a minute, and I'll play the third part of Wheelhouse, and ain't one of these 3 guys up here will figure it out until I'm done with it. And it's on the record. But the banjo used to have his own part that played. Rudy Lyle didn't play rawhide like Bill Monroe did. He had his own specific break for that banjo out there. Wheelhouse, the same way with Hubert Davis playing and all these other things. But then Bill Keith comes along, and all of a sudden he's playing the melody, so all of a sudden the fiddle player's playing or the banjo player's playing what the fiddle player's playing, what the mandolin player's playing. And literally the scope of music became less and less broad there, but it was reborn as an elevated art form. We'll play you a couple of tunes out of that era here in a minute. I'll play you Jerusalem Ridge, and you'll get to hear some of the more sophisticated of the music that Monroe came up with in the second half of his career. But it wasn't until after the bluegrass festivals in Fincastle that other people outside Monroe's circle started calling themselves bluegrass. Doc Watson wasn't no bluegrass player. He was included in Fincastle to do a first part of it when Carlton did his bluegrass story. Doc was up there at Ralph Rensler's invitation to show everybody what Bill had sounded like when he was working with his brother Charlie as a duet. Jim and Jesse come on the festival up there. They ain't got nobody see. All the bands that were booked on the first Fincastle Festival had at least one member who had been a member of Monroe's band. That way he could do his Sunday afternoon bluegrass story and try to recreate those old bands. But all of a sudden they started including the Country Gentlemen, a lounge act from D.C. You know, all these other acts started coming into it, and they started calling themselves bluegrass too. Now gradually, this thing has watered itself down where anybody that's got, you know, back in the 70s, anybody had a banjo and the band was bluegrass. Boy, Roy Clark's a hell of a bluegrass banjo player, but hee-haw, he was doing it there. You know, it just got watered down until now it's just, folks, it's like jam band music across the board out there. And the ones who try to follow the traditional route with it usually are so over the top in their delivery that, I don't know, it's kind of weird. Jerusalem Ridge, you know that all right, don't you? Yes. Don't you? I'm gonna have to come down here and start rehearsing you before these things. That's all there is to this. tune that sort of defined the second half of Monroe's career. The music died off as a primal form in the late 50s up till the early 60s when Ralph Rensler became Monroe's manager, and use something like my hand. All this cough in my hand. Has anybody got a napkin or Kleenex or something? I'll find something here. Thank you so much. Anyhow, the music got reborn into this. The old man's music started getting a whole lot more complex. The tone poems, you know, where in the 50s the music had just had a geographic name put to itself, Brown County Breakdown. All of a sudden these tunes, Lonesome Moonlight Waltz, which was originally called the Kentucky Moonlight Waltz, Mississippi Waltz, all these things, when you would play them, they would have the flavor of that. That Mississippi Waltz is one of those sultry tunes that I was talking about when I showed you that windshield wiper thing. But here's one that sort of epitomizes the second half of his career, the elevated art form. I hung up a pic there. That was pretty bad. Frank, I appreciate it. Little Roy, I don't know. second string, something happens to it, it sounds like there's leather in the slot here or something that's deadening a little bit on it. I was talking about it a little bit earlier today, and the fellow said, when's the last time you changed your strings? And I thought it's been somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 years now, so they're probably getting about gone, I'd say. All right, here's a tune that was written and broken down in a snowstorm in '81. Second part ain't much to it. Third part is just a lot of chord changes. Hang on. Bob Wills. Could you sing something like San Antonio Rose or something like that?
I don't know the words.
Thank you.
That's all I know.
We can play you a melody of something like that. I used to do one of his old, I don't know what they did in his band. You know that tune, Stumbling? That I used to play this. This may be an interesting. It's going to be interesting on my part. That's for damn That's dun 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 dun. Where's it go?
Anybody a D or D?
There's where my tuner went. I was just looking for it. What you want to sing off of it?
I won't sing nothing. You play something.
Here's an interesting thought. I got an old-timey lecture by Roy Acuff once upon a time. I was sitting in his dressing room playing, and somebody wanted to play Cumberland Gap. So, typically... Well, I came to find out that that wasn't really the tune. I know, he told me so. And proceeded with his fiddle to scratch it out. And I'll start it off like that. The second pass I take at it, I'll play it the way that he showed me how to play. It's real funny. There's a bunch of Kenny Baker's dad's stuff that I'll do in this for you too. Roy Acuff, the king of country music. He got bigger than the Grand Ole Opry for a while. He went out to Hollywood, made him about 6 movies. One of the things he was proudest of in his life was he stuck a picture up in his dressing room that had him playing live on Broadway, and Ronald Reagan was his front act. And when Reagan came to the Grand Ole Opry, he made sure that got pointed out real well, you know. Number one, about the number 1 or 2 guy to go in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Who's first? Jimmy Rogers first, and Acuff right after that. Patriarch of the Grand Ole Opry, supposedly, since he was appointed at the head of the table when they were trying to figure out whether to let Flatt and Scruggs on with the dobro and the mandolin player that could never take a break on the Grand Ole Opry. That was part of the deal in it. Roy Acuff. You know, this worst thing that I see about this whole thing called bluegrass is if Roy Acuff were introduced today and to take the stage with his fiddle and his banjo and his dobro and his guitar out there and his bass, he would be introduced as a bluegrass band. And that's a travesty. travesty. It diminishes his work as a country musician, and it completely makes a different kind of music. It's like comparing the bossa nova to Bob Marley's music when it comes to rhythmic undertone. Any requests?
What do you expect I'll do it?
That would be a stretch here. All right, here's one Fireball Mail we'll play for you. A lot of the banjo players and everything. This is a pretty straight up banjo tune that most of the guys recognized as this great banjo player. I asked Carlton Haney how I could become the best that ever was once upon a time. He told me, he said, all you got to do is learn how to play your banjo the way Bill Monroe learns how to play his mandolin, plays his mandolin, and you got it. And I went on a quest to do that. And I lost everything in the process, including my mind for a while. But I think I've done a pretty good job of it on the backside. From what Pete Kuykendall and some of those other folks say, I understood what that old man is and what his importance was in music. That's why I try to talk as much as I can about him and get people to go back and listen to the original music. Any youngsters you know that are getting into music, I realize Chris Thiele's just absolutely wonderful. But if he were sitting here playing beside me tonight, I would have made sure you didn't hear him. Because the power is not there. All these young people playing nowadays, the power, the brilliance of the notes, to have an instrument like this, to hear it ring. And, you know, I've flubbed a few times for you guys, but most of it's been relatively clean tonight. Like in Scott, the way he plays his mandolin, the way Willard plays his guitar here, the ring out with the tones are more important than that 10,000 notes they may be playing for you. There's a lot of stuff that those old guys had before music started getting dumbed down. If they think they can play, Sam Bush told me when I was in the Newgrass Revival, you ought to listen to Bill Monroe. I ain't got no use for him. I worked for him 5-7 years ago. I just don't care nothing about him. It don't matter what he is as a person. Listen to him. What God put in him, that music, no matter what he's made out of himself, that person, that music that's coming to him is something special. Listen to him. And I did. Wheel horse. All right, there's your one. nobody else to play with. It's on the record. Hubert Davis playing. It is. It's right there. Everybody to see and hear it. All right. What else? George, just do that Christmas song. I got my Christmas attire on. I'm ready for the holiday season. Sure. It's about as low as that. Please don't put that last thing I sung for you out on the internet. It was about 2 keys too low for me. God, I've had enough on some of that stuff they put on me out there.
What is it? What Christmas song is it?
I wrote this Christmas song. A lot of times what I do to get myself out of these depressions I go in, I've got one song that I hope Scott's going to help me chart called Dream. It's one of the nicer ones I ever did for that. But here's a song that I was thinking, I started out being a Christmas song, but it wound up talking about more stuff in your life. Because in the middle of it, where I take a banjo break when I recorded the thing, it was a demo that I've done there, and I say right at that point that the most wonderful thing that I found in life is that within the infinite possibilities of each moment lie those decisions that you and I could each make that could possibly turn that moment into the most special of our entire earthly existence. That's the magic of life, those infinite possibilities we have in every moment. So the verse and the chorus, it starts this thing out to be talking about Christmas, and that little recitation, which I can't do, I can't talk and play at the same time. That's what the recitation would have been in the middle, and the second chorus is just talking about life itself. But it goes. Here's wishing you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. May all the blessings of love and life be on you while all your loved ones are near. Let all the seasons joy be a blanket wrapped around you. The holidays over, we'll Santa Claus down to you. You a Merry Christmas, happy, happy New Year. Let's see, yes, there's a chorus right here, fellas. It's no matter. right, anything else? Any requests? Please don't put that one on the air out there.
We probably just need to do one more, I guess.
Got a little bit of Gerald Dixie.
Yeah.
You're gonna keep on till I play that one nights out, ain't you?
I'll actually play that.
All right.